Hello, welcome everyone to another edition of Social Value Always Matters with me, Ben Carpenter, Chief Executive of Social Value International. And I'm delighted to say I have with us Natalie Nicholles from the Capitals Coalition. How are you doing?
I'm good. Great to be here. It's nice to see you, Ben.
Thanks, Natalie. So just before we start, just give you a little overview introduction to our viewers of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a director at the Capitals Coalition, and we're a global collaboration of business, finance, government, civil society, and others that are working to transform how decisions are made, making sure that this includes the value provided by nature, people, and society. We call it capitals thinking, making decisions on natural, social, and human capital, but it actually doesn't matter what it's called as long as it's about people and nature. And what other things might be interesting for you? So I believe in a couple of things that I'm quite passionate about. One, that the people and the planet need to be at the heart of all of our decisions. And that the only way to make that happen, to really radically transform the way that we do things, is through good collaboration. So bringing people together who are working on different parts of the system, and also taking people from where they are. I'm a mum of 2 little boys, and they're really keeping me on my toes at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks for that introduction, Natalie. Really, really great to have you sharing your views. Because what we're trying to do at the moment is just create some speak to leaders in different sectors just to understand how the coronavirus crisis is affecting our business. So just share with us a little bit, how you've had to react for yourself as a team, but then also have you seen a reaction from your community of businesses or governments that you work with?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, I'm still struggling to get my head around the implications of the pandemic for me personally, and for us as a society, and for work at the coalition. And I suppose on the kind of team side, we're a small and remote team anyway. So working in a different way hasn't been that much of a transition. I think what we're struggling with, like many other people, is the fact that individually we're isolated from being physically close to other people. So that's challenging, and we have to make sure that we've got enough touch points and we're speaking to each other regularly enough to still feel that we are one, but really recognizing that people's mental health is fragile, and that's normal for it to be fragile during this time. So there's kind of lots of things that are going on, particularly in the back of my mind as we're working and trying to live as well. And I think as a coalition, we are a community, so we rely on the community's resilience to work together through tough challenges. The core of what we stand for, what we try to do, is to measure and value our relationship with people and nature. And that's difficult at the best of times, right? Because it is completely way more complex than our traditional way of accounting for value. And at the moment, we're definitely focusing on trying to be as inclusive as possible with our work, and understanding that everyone's, including our own priorities, have completely shifted with the pandemic. A lot of our work is about working with people and bringing others together in this kind of collaborative space. So, we had a fantastic plan for 2020 based on a lot of the international events that were going to take place, that were going to be a real powerful opportunity to advocate for a different way of understanding progress. That's obviously changed, so we're having to change our work quite considerably. I don't think necessarily it's a bad thing. We're just having to be more creative and a bit more inventive. And so, for example, we were going to do a 2-day forum in Uganda on natural capital. That's turned into a 4-month festival. That's going to be digital and online to take into account the virus, but also to make sure that we can still get participation and work with the partners that have spent so much time, putting energy and effort into planning these types of things. But I think probably most importantly, I'd say that we're really conscious and humbled by the toll that humanity is facing with the virus. And we as an organisation have chosen not to make any bold statements about our reaction or what we're going to do about it, because we don't really know. But we've chosen to check in with our community and adapt our plans as we see fit, like I just said. And I think kind of take it a little bit, a week at a time and a month at a time, while being able to plan as much as we can in advance, but recognising that actually none of us know how this is going to pan out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so hard to plan, isn't it? But it's interesting you talk about different new ways to be creative and collaborate. And we are seeing a lot of unprecedented levels of collaboration in many ways, aren't we? Which is great. But it's also, we're in the thick of it at the moment, and we're seeing sort of just putting a social value lens on it for a second. The crisis is exposing sort of issues of inequality, the environment, and well-being, as you've touched on as well. Is that something that you've been aware of and looking at?
Oh, completely. I mean, you know, we kind of see that, you know, even before the pandemic, we were already facing huge challenges, right? Climate change, inequality, the loss of nature. And what you know, the way that I would explain how we're seeing that now is we're seeing a convergence of these risks, and they're affecting the most vulnerable. And you know, in the past, climate change we knew and we know affects the most vulnerable. Inequality, it affects the most vulnerable. But somehow this crisis, because it is so equal, right? Everybody and anybody can catch the virus. The virus does not discriminate between people's resources or not. It's really bringing it to the forefront. So, you know, I'm reading about, you know, smallholder farmers that are struggling with, you know, already not being able to predict the climate to support their crops, but are also having to contend with potentially falling ill, or their families falling ill. You know, we can see across the world societies, and even within our own society, but particularly at a global level, you have societies that have little or no social security, and therefore there's zero resilience in that system to cope with this crisis. So the impact on them is going to be completely different to the impact on, you know, a community within the UK. But even within places like the UK, I think the impact on well-being is vastly different depending on your social and economic circumstances. And we're reading and we're hearing about that, you know, huge amount from those that, you know, have the ability to go into their garden compared to those that don't. So I think it's shining a big old light on inequalities. The ones that we've known have always been there, but perhaps we've, you know, they've been out of sight because we've allowed them to be, or we've chosen for them to be. I think what we're seeing just now is how much we as a global society are dependent on the professions that are deemed low skilled, right? Like those immigrant workers in California who, you know, who rely on to feed us, or the healthcare workers, or the delivery drivers, and these people who are putting their lives on the line to keep us safe. The social value of those professions is huge, and has always been important, but up until now has been hidden. And years ago, in 2009, I worked at the New Economics Foundation, and they did a piece of research called A Bit Rich, and it compared the social value created by 6 professions, 3 high-paid professions. At the time, it was a tax accountant and a city worker, and a lawyer, I think, and 3 low-paid professions, which included a hospital cleaner. And the analysis showed that the social value created by those professions was completely disproportionate with how much they were paid. And this crisis just, I think, has completely brought that to the fore. I'd really encourage, you know, your listeners and yourself, Social Value UK, to dig that out because it is very relevant. And I think,
called a bit rich.
It's called A Bit Rich. Yeah, 2009 it was published. It's still on. It's on the New Economics Foundation's website.
Right.
And I think what's interesting when we're looking at this through a social value lens, and we're understanding climate change, inequality, loss of nature, is, you know, before the crisis, particularly within the Capitals Coalition's community, we were hearing a growing recognition from business that business as usual wasn't working. So leaders in business and government were saying to us they want to transition to a more sustainable future, but the crux was they didn't know how to do it. For us, that's where Capitals thinking comes in, because it's the underpinning information upon which you decide how to make that transition. You know, a transition to an economy that is low carbon and that supports well-being for all is going to be huge, particularly if we have to do it in a 30-year time frame compared to the 250 years that we've had of being based on fossil fuels. But we find it fascinating, and very much there's a kind of an opportunity within all of this, sadly, that there is already an appetite to kind of shift on that transition. But I also kind of want to be frank. I feel like, you know, you and I and others are in an incredibly privileged position to be able to be commenting on these issues. You know, and we're conscious, and I'm certainly conscious, that I think, you know, we want to use this privilege to change conversations and ultimately change the access, the actions that are going to address these inequalities by understanding value beyond economic terms.
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know, it's certainly made me much more grateful for everything that I have, and I do
Mm.
feel privilege in everything that you just said. So you're spot on. But we also like just turn the conversation around to what we can do, you know, in these positions of privileged positions, and we are working in this space where we're calling for a new economy. You've been working in this space for many years now, as have I, and we've had many, you know, conversations and been thinking about this for a while, and this does feel like a bit of a moment in history that might be the opportunity for us to, you know, a jolt to the system, you know, like a shock, which kicks us into kind of reframing how we organize and structure. That's what I'm hoping. So whilst I hear what you're saying about it's too early, and it is too early at this point to come out with bold statements, we should be looking at within gauging the right tone about
Agree, yeah.
the narrative around what we want the new normal to look like, because I think we can all agree, you and I and everyone watching this probably, that we don't want to return to the business as usual model. We can't if we think about the risks that you've just explained.
Yeah,
So
completely.
I know it's early days, Natalie, but sort of what are you thinking about what we can learn from this crisis and take forward, and the right tone as well?
Oh, yeah, I feel like answering that with like, how long have you got? Because it's something, you know, it's definitely going around in my head. And, you know, like you say, we've been working in this space for a while. So, and with other people that I'm speaking to as well. So I was kind of trying to gather my thoughts for you this morning. I think how we build back better will depend on our recognition that our normal is a crisis, right? So you and I believe that. And I imagine the listeners of this will as well. And there's a whole kind of segment of the population will. But that isn't mainstreamed yet. Normal created the context for the virus to unleash havoc in the world. And I hope that we are able to learn from what's happening right now and take concrete steps to designing this, you know, I don't know, we've called it a new economy, but I would call it kind of a well-being economy that's problem solving rather than problem creating. And how well we do that, so create this new system, this new economy, will heavily depend on the strength of our social capital, particularly after this crisis. Our trust in each other, our trust in institutions, historically, they have actually been quite low, particularly trust in institutions and in business. And the Endelman Trust Barometer has been tracks this every year. And I've been following that data for the past 5 years. So there has been a lack of public trust. That is going to have to change if we're going to bring the public with us, and if the governments are going to be bold enough. Which leads me to my other kind of hope. I hope there's going to be the political will and the courage to develop policies that take down our reliance on fossil fuels and put well-being at the heart of what we're doing. I hope that a transition towards a different way of living and working puts people and nature at the heart of that. You know, there is so much that we're learning just on a day-to-day practical level about working. Now, do I want to take the tube in to work? Do I have to travel? Probably not. There's some amount that can be done, but you know, this is an opportunity for us as people as well, to make decisions about how we live our life, not just rely on governments and on business to change their actions. There's kind of, you know, a bit of leading by example. I think that needs to happen. And I hope that we'll recover with a much greater appreciation of the value that we gain from healthy communities and ecosystems. And that our decision-making processes fundamentally will consider more than just financial capital, which is what they're based on right now. But I think this transition is going to be really tough. I can't quite envision what it means in practice yet for people who've lost their jobs or for the businesses that need to start again. So that's why we need to use this crisis at the moment as an inflection point, and really a time to reflect and to gather what we're learning, as opposed to coming straight away to solutions, I think.
Yeah, no, I really like that, Natalie. So big takeaway for me is, like, you know, are we going to rebuild trust in society? Is there going to be the political will, the boldness to kind of do something different? And that last point as well about individuals, can we all kind of take something, you know, just from, you know, the way we work as a household? Are we going to change that? Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, just to wrap this up then, it's incredibly scary time at the moment, really strange, surreal. But there's also been real pockets of I don't know, good things.
Yeah.
Has there been anything that you've seen that has reconfirmed your faith in humanity? Something optimistic for us to end on?
Do you know what? So actually, so much of this crisis has reconfirmed my faith in humanity. I think before the crisis hit, I don't know about you, but I was running around like a headless chicken. They're going to work, they're coming home. I've got, like I said, I've got 2 young children. I live in London, it's a big city. It was a constant rat race. And I do a job where I'm incredibly passionate about things that need to change. But this whole experience has allowed the creativity, I think, of humans to come through. And I marvel constantly at humans' ability to laugh, to be creative, to support one another, and to do it in such a beautiful way. I think it has brought out the best of humans. So I think the things that have made me smile are, I love the rainbows. Every time I take my kids around where we live, I love seeing rainbows. In the windows, I love the little signs that say, thank you NHS, thank you post people, thank you delivery drivers. There's a couple of initiatives that are about giving fresh food to NHS frontline workers. Brilliant. I love that. People are just sorting their lives out. They're volunteering. They're getting, they're pooling food together, and they're delivering it to people who, quite frankly, are never going to have the time to go to the supermarket, because, we need them to be at the front line and help to tackle the crisis. And I probably love the most is the clapping on a Thursday night, because up until that point, we don't get to see, we're not seeing lots of people. So I take my son out, and the whole, they're banging pots and pans and people are clapping, and just for like a brief moment, it makes us all feel that actually while the streets are completely quiet, you can see people, and everyone is in this together. So I think we can get through this. It will just take a little bit of time, but we have many more of those, many more creativity, much more initiatives that will bring us together, and I think that all of those things will help.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That creativity, feeling of togetherness, we need that to get through it. So brilliant. That's a lovely way to finish. Thanks, Natalie.
You're very welcome.
Really appreciate your time in this challenging moment, and look forward to working with you as we try and build back better, as you say.
Yeah, love it. Let's do that. Thank you, Ben.
Bye.